The Borg are back, all dressed in black. I feel like I've seen this before in the Star Trek of yore. The action is fun and tight, but I can't shake the feeling this just isn't right. I'm Justin.
I'm Josh.
And this is From There to Here.
Okay, so this is Season 2, Episode 23. It's called Regeneration. And according to the IMDb, this is what it's about. An Arctic research team makes a startling find. Cybernetic creatures. Borg, buried in the ice. When the revived alien sees control of a spacecraft, it's up to Archer to keep them from contacting the collective and threatening Earth. Now, on IMDb, it's already listed this as top rated, so I know it has to be at least above an 8.0. So I'll say if it's top rated, and I've never seen that before, then it's probably like 8.6 or something.
Yeah, probably.
Let's see what it is. 8.5. Okay. What do you have in form of trivia?
Well, a little bit. Let's see. Obviously, it was a follow-up to First Contact, to which executive producer Brandon Braga initially refused to feature the Borg, calling it a, quote, cheap trick. He agreed only after hearing the premise for Regeneration, and he thought that, quote, it was such a great concept, he couldn't resist it. Set pieces were used from both Voyager and from First Contact. The actress that played the human scientist in the beginning, one of the ones that gets taken, she is in real life. Excuse me. She is in real life Dr. Phlox's wife, and John Billingsley's wife. And then let's see, Brian Tyler, as we talked about, produced the score for Regeneration. Previously, he had produced music for the episode Canamar. Tyler, a lifelong Star Trek fan, requested a full tour of the Enterprise set as a condition of his contract. That's cool. He was asked to score more episodes, but with limited time available, he specifically chose Regenerations as it was a Borg episode. And there's this. Writers Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens pitched a story to be used for a Season 5 Enterprise episode, which would have been a follow-up on the events of Regeneration. They intended to bring actress Alice Krige back, who was, of course, the Borg Queen from First Contact, back to Star Trek as a Starfleet medical technician who makes contact with the Borg seen in this episode. This was to result in the creation of the Borg Queen from First Contact. Now, that would have been cool.
I guess.
That just as a concept, assuming they did it right, to see Alice Krige go from human to Borg, that kind of would have been cool.
Well, they're already wanking people.
I almost kind of wish,
keep going.
Why didn't they just do that here? Make that human scientist girl Alice Krige and have her.
Isn't that what they just
no
trivia said?
No, they were saying that they thought up another idea for a follow up to this episode.
Oh, I thought that trivia inferred that was their idea was for that woman to be okay. I see.
No.
Well, yeah, that would be cool, but as I said,
necessary. No.
I said, yeah, it's just more wank, so might as well keep wanking off.
Before we go forward, because I do want to address our fan questions first.
Yeah. fan questions. Listener
questions. I knew you were going to call me out. So this was scored an 8.5, you said?
Yes.
Do you think this is an 8.5?
No.
Okay.
It's a fine episode, don't get me wrong. I was entertained.
As far as an IMDb score, what do you think it more appropriately should be?
In relation to
other Enterprise episodes, yes.
Other Enterprise episodes, well, I'd give it somewhere in the 7 to 8 range, maybe.
All right.
It's perfectly entertaining.
Yeah.
It's perfectly unnecessary, though.
At the end of the day, that's my thought.
It doesn't make sense.
No. Well, it makes sense. I think they did well to sort of do their best to.
I don't think so.
I thought they took
they have complete knowledge of the Borg, which is not supposed to happen.
I
don't think so.
I agree. They do have way too much knowledge of the Borg, but of course they made sure never to use the word Borg, which then couldn't be entered in a database.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have aliens with shielding, be very difficult.
I'm not a continuity snob.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff doesn't bother me that much. So I'm fine with this episode. But when it's so obvious, it just leaves me feeling a little empty.
I'll say this at the top. Okay, I was going to maybe save it to the end, but I think this is appropriate. I thought it was a good episode. You know, it's entertaining and fun and all of that stuff. I agree with you completely. It feels unnecessary and I don't want to say pandering.
Oh, absolutely
but
it is. Yes.
More to the point, I hate to say this because like we just said, the episode didn't need to exist, but if 75% of Enterprise episodes that are action episodes had this kind of energy, Enterprise would have been a very different show. You know, I feel like they put everything into this. You know, they got a film composer to do the music. Mm-hmm. The editing was fast and tight. All the actors had something interesting to do. There was drama. Mm-hmm. If every Enterprise episode had this amount of attention.
Yes. I'm guessing it was Sweeps Week.
That'd be my suspicion.
Yes. If it was, I agree. There were a lot of good elements in there.
It was well made.
It was well done. As you said, we both noticed the music.
Sure.
And I noticed a lot of the camera angles they had a lot of good personal close-ups. I thought was interesting. Really able to read actors' faces in a way that I guess I hadn't seen a lot in Enterprise.
I didn't think about it, but now that you mentioned, I feel like I can see that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a style to it, and like you said, the pacing was tight.
It was
the energy was good.
Archer actually didn't. I didn't feel like Scott Bakula was holding back. I felt like he was, you know, when he had to blow the people out of the airlock. Yes, they kind of slowed down a little too much, in my opinion.
I guess Scott Bakula was just champing at the bit to let himself go.
Well, I felt like everyone just, like Malcolm is shooting and all of that. Everything was great. I just wish for the creators of Enterprise that they had come up with some other villain to wrap this around, because this was, technically speaking, a really well done
think
episode.
about this in this context. This was 2004, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It was somewhere in the early 2000s. And First Contact was what, 1996? So
I think so, 2003.
Okay, so this was 7 years later. So it was not that old.
Right.
Still pretty fresh in everybody's mind. So looking at it 20 years later, you know, it doesn't have the same effect on me. But even back then in the context of 2003, Voyager had burned the Borg out.
Yes.
Completely burned it out. If they hadn't done that, a Borg episode here may have been a little bit more memorable.
It's hard to say because you and I watched Voyager through its run, so we were spoiled.
Did we?
Or did we kind of peter out?
I think we did.
I don't think so, because I seem to have memory of you specifically towards the last at least year of Voyager's run, watching that specifically with our mother. I remember you talking about that. So we may have petered out and then came back to it. I feel like we did. I feel like that's what we did.
I honestly can't remember. It was so long
Ultimately,
ago.
the point being, though, is that I agree. You're right. They had done the Borg to death. They had taken their teeth away. So this was different for us. Mm-hmm. I assume for most Trek fans.
And this episode didn't really explain how that, whatever that was, got to the Arctic.
Well, they don't, and they can't, because we're supposed to know as Trek fans I had to tell you what it was.
What did you tell me?
I told you it's the Borg cube from
the Borg
beginning
sphere
of
that they blow up.
Yeah, not the cubes. The
no,
sphere.
I gathered that, but
the elements of it rain down on Earth.
Is that what that's supposed to be?
Yes, that's exactly what that's supposed to be.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
That's why I said to you. So literally, those Borg survived re-entry.
They would burn up. That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. That's my point. And they were shown to be up in the they were high enough to where they would have had to go through reentry. They weren't in the atmosphere.
No, well, yeah, they were in orbit. They were
and
in low orbit.
So that's the conceit of the episode, which I'll grant you is an interesting conceit. But when you think about it, you're like, well, yeah, why would these bodies have, their skin would have burned up? Maybe the technology would have survived, but the skin is gone, but it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I have this beef, right? As we were watching the episode. First of all, do Borg nano, what are they called?
Nanites.
Do Borg nanites literally have coding in them that says turn all available light green? That I get it from a dramatic point of view, but you have to imagine all that we see happen on the Enterprise, this Enterprise, happens because of the Borg, the humans that in the Enterprise time were Borgified and then went onto an alien ship and then made it onto Enterprise. So within that,
why are you picking nits about?
Because
about their interior decoration.
I couldn't help but think about this. Literally built into their coding is to turn all available light green, and
I don't think they're intentionally turning it green for the sake of color. I think it has something to do with their technology.
Okay, fine.
But
speaking of that technology, it is somehow able to recreate perfect Borg alcoves and things like that. It honestly sort of stretches credibility, because at least in TNG, Voyager, all of that, whenever they encounter Borg, they're on their own ship and so on and so forth, and they've already got technology on them. So when you see, or even in First Contact,
why are you applying logic to this?
Because
you're not supposed to.
Well, you can't help but do that after a while. It's kind of ludicrous.
Well, of course it is, but you're not supposed to apply logic to something like this.
I did.
You're supposed to watch it and go, "Oh, Borg alcove, I remember that."
Well, I didn't do that.
Well, that's what they're doing for the people out there.
Well,
like, you remember this, don't you? You like this.
You're right.
It doesn't make a lick of sense.
Did you notice when Enterprise comes face to face with that alien ship that the human Borg people took over? That ship was making the sound effects of a Borg ship. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
That whoa.
I didn't.
They did. And I thought, okay, when you're really going too far. Like, that's ridiculous.
They saw Borg with their own eyes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's cameras around.
There's got to be a camera
that captured them.
Yeah.
It's too much.
I know.
It's too much.
All right. Well, I think we've said our piece. Let's move on to our listener questions. I won't use the word fans.
Yeah, no, that would be bad. So Sebastian writes about regeneration.
Yeah.
Question number 1. Those future Borg must have been technologically superior to anyone around Earth at that time. Why didn't they just try to assimilate Earth and then the Alpha Quadrant?
Good question.
Don't apply so much logic to this.
That's a very good point, because if you think about it, the people that were what do you call
assimilated?
Assimilated. You and I talked about this very briefly as the episode played. There would have been coding built into them to assimilate, to do this, to do that. So that they are trying to get off world and then clearly head to the Delta Quadrant almost makes no sense, because their first instinct is to assimilate. And they could walk into a town in Alaska where the ship was, find the nearest town, and they could have that place taken over in like no time. Why didn't they do that?
Again,
why was then their first instinct?
You're not supposed to think about it. Again, I know. I wish I had an answer that.
Although to be fair, at least one of the Borg from First Contact, reawakened, so they would know, that Borg would know what year it is. They would know where everything is.
Oh, they knew they were in the past.
So perhaps they built into their coding saying, "Hey, let's say that main Borg took over as queen for a minute."
They were doing exactly what the Borg in First Contact did.
I know. But maybe that's basically what his programming was saying, was just contact our people.
They were trying to do both. They were trying to assimilate.
They assimilated as they went.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay,
fine.
I mean, I suppose they could have just stayed on Earth.
The odds would not have been in their favor had they stayed on Earth, to be fair. They did have a better chance getting off world because Starfleet could just drop a big bomb on them.
Well, Starfleet was lucky that they weren't unearthed in some populated area. This is very much like The Thing. It was in the Arctic.
They should have just made that. Just made it The Thing.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
It would have been.
That
thought did come into your mind.
Would have been a pale imitation
while you were watching
course,
it, right?
But no, not until you said it, which it should have.
It shouldn't have been. It was not a coincidence, I'm sure.
So. I doubt that setting was not a coincidence. You're right. I'm sure one of the writers said, "Hey, make it like The Thing. Have them be in the Arctic, snow, scientists."
Well, what would the episode have been? Could they have done that if instead Enterprise comes back to Earth to help Earth fight off Borg in the Arctic?
I don't know. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
At least it would have been contained. I don't know. Maybe. But then we would really draw a direct comparison to The Thing.
Okay. So question number 2, as we all know, the Borg have very strong wireless connection capabilities.
Yeah.
They used to listen to the whole collective. If it's in, sorry, let me read that sentence again. They use this to listen to the whole collective if it's in range. They physically merge with complex technology, so they could easily control any assimilated technology by thought. So why do they even bother to use physical interfaces? If everything they do is, if they can wirelessly control technology, then why use physical?
Well, that implies
contacts?
That technology has some sort of wireless component built into it. Maybe it doesn't. Right?
Yeah, I see. Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, and clearly they did, if they construct an alcove, I'm sure that alcove has built into it some sort of wireless transceiver so they can do that. But they have to build that into the new technology they're coming across. And maybe, I mean, I still don't understand how like Phlox or someone else can develop like they showed in First Contact, essentially how.
I'm looking at the question again. Sebastian is referring to technology that they've already assimilated.
Well, it all depends, I think.
Well, it depends on what? I mean,
they were down there in that one section of the ship that Trip ended up working on towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what they were doing. I think it was something about the transceiver to send a message to the Borg. I think that's what Enterprise ultimately figured out. And it did do that. I mean, essentially, once they were in the area it was supposed to be or had everything it needed to have, it transmitted. So, I mean, they kind of did that. I think the implication is that the moment they touch something, they have control over it. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it has to, like that arm that comes off of that Borg, I don't think he's in control of it necessarily. That wireless component has to be built into it. You know what I'm saying?
Not quite. I'm not following your logic here.
Well, I mean, he's asking the question, why don't they just wirelessly control every piece of technology they come across? But I don't think every piece of technology they come across has that ability built into it. Just because they've messed with it doesn't mean it has a wireless component built in.
Well, their technology can operate at that level. So why doesn't it all act that way when it's assimilated?
Well, who says that? Who says that it can?
I think that's supposed to be inferred from the way they... No?
I mean, I don't think it's stretched to think that, but it's, to my knowledge, it's never been specifically said. The Borg are obviously in communication with each other, but they've never, to my knowledge, explicitly said that they can just control technology by thought. Yes, I know, and someone's going to point it out, in the original Borg episode in TNG, someone made reference to, and I'm paraphrasing, they repair just by thought or something. But I think the implication with that is one of them thinks, oh, this hole needs to be repaired. So they all then do it. I don't think it's a matter of they think it and the technology just fixes itself. I think they still have to put hands on things, or at least most things. I mean, that does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, but I see you can see the contradiction that kind of technology could bring. I think that's what Sebastian is indicating here with that question, but dramatically it wouldn't work if they never move and never do anything.
Well, yeah.
So
yeah. And I don't think they would need it to all be wireless. They have arms and hands. They're going to use them.
Question number 3. I think there's a weird time travel paradox. Ooh, Justin likes this kind of stuff.
My Vulcan ears just peaked.
Because when Picard and his crew meet the Borg for the first time, they will not know about Archer's previous encounter with the Borg. However, that Borg signal sent to the Delta Quadrant. It may be the reason why the Borg were already interested in pushing towards the Alpha Quadrant when Picard first met them. So that paradox seems to be a paradox within itself, or am I missing something? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
No. I mean, that seemed to make sense to me. They were... Okay, well, I think if we go back to Q-Who, that episode seemed to infer that the Borg weren't aware of humans yet. They weren't on their way to the Alpha Quadrant yet. They went to J25, where the Borg were. Right. Then they became aware of them.
Well, they say at the end of this episode it would take 200 years for the message that these Borg sent to get to the Delta Quadrant anyway, which would be
by that
roughly
point it would
the time
be
of TNG.
The next generation of humans.
Right. So first of all, who's to say that message even made it? And even if it did, let's say the Borg are going about their business in the Delta Quadrant, and all of a sudden they get this message and they go, oh, hey, look at that. One of our people time traveled and went to Earth. What's Earth? It's in the Alpha Quadrant? We'll get there when we get there. They probably weren't in any hurry, honestly. If you think about it from a Borg perspective, they're in control of the Delta Quadrant. They're expanding out in a natural progression. There would be really no need to suddenly halt their plans and just jump to the Alpha Quadrant. That, I think, changed when Q brought the Enterprise to them, and then they realized, oh, well, now they're aware of us. They really know who we are. Now let's make more of an effort to get to them before they can prepare for us. Plus,
from the Borg's point of view, they weren't expecting to run into humans by that point.
Exactly.
It's J25 anyway.
Right,
so.
right. And then now assuming they even got that first message, here now they've run into the Federation, and they offer technology that is now useful to them. So now they probably thought, let's figure out a way to get there.
So I think there's ways around that thought of thinking it could be a paradox. I think you can make logical sense out of that.
Yeah, I think just like what Harv Bennett said when it came to Star Trek 2 and 3, when they said, well, what if Leonard Nimoy wants to come back? And he said, fine, then we'll just do this little bit with him touching McCoy and saying, remember. And he basically said, any writer worth his salt could use that and build something around it. So I think Sebastian had a very logical question, and I think you and I just came up with one possible writing solution out of it. And I think, like you said, there's any number of ways to write your way out of that. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a paradox.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, that was all from Sebastian on Regeneration.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Yes.
Marie writes about Regeneration. This is more of a comment before we go into the actual question part. Borg again.
You guys suck.
And Borg. I just finished watching Picard and had hoped watching Enterprise will give me a break from the cybernetic freaks.
Good luck.
Sadly, I was wrong. This is Star Trek after all. You can tell this is
all of Picard season.
I love the styles of Marie and Sebastian, completely different. This episode feels like a misstep in Enterprise, primarily due to its awkward insertion of the Borg into a timeline where they arguably don't belong. The episode undermines the continuity of the Star Trek universe, leading to potential confusion. Yeah, I agree. The plot feels contrived, relying heavily on the pre-existing threat of the Borg rather than developing its own unique storyline. While the performances and special effects are commendable, the episode's overall execution and impact on Star Trek canon leave much to be desired. Who knows, maybe Q snapped his fingers in the background and made all this disappear. I never thought about that. He's always saying how feeble our minds are. Okay, so here's the question. How do Archer and the crew's responses to the Borg threat differ from the reactions of the characters in other Star Trek series?
I don't really think they differed. I think they dealt with every situation as best they could as it came up. I think.
Well, in terms of like reaction, they couldn't show us the kind of curiosity and exploration that like in Q-Who, for instance, they took their time to really like, let's look in this drawer. Oh, it's a Borg baby. They can't do that here. The audience knows what the Borg is. I mean, the whole first act of the episode, which pretty much it didn't have any Enterprise actors in it. It was just those three scientists. That part, I forgot where I was going with that. Never mind. I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh no. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. We know at that point when the Borg are on their medical tables inside this Arctic station, we know the Borg are bad news. These people don't. We're just waiting for that other shoe to drop, and
we know it will.
It's not like The Thing, for instance, where we're not quite sure what it is they found, what it's capable of.
Right.
This, we know what it is. We know it's bad. So we're just waiting for them to wake up.
Yeah.
At that point. So again, I think I use that as an example because, as I said, we know what the Borg is. The audience knows. Just the characters in this show don't. So we can't waste as much time on them figuring things out because it would bore us.
Right.
So their reactions are a bit subdued, quick, compared at least to the other series.
Well, I think this show very intentionally, like you pointed out, we, the viewer, know exactly who these Borg are. So you can't waste screen time on this with them figuring it out too. And I think the writers of this episode very knowingly wrote the episode that way so that you have the scientists in Antarctica not knowing for a little while, but as soon as they get into space, as soon as Enterprise encounters them, there's no time for exploration. They are immediately threatened and have to fight because that's what we want. Mm-hmm. We've already done the exploration. So as far as I don't think this crew did anything different than any other Star Trek crew running into the Borg did. They were just thrust into action a little quicker, not so much the Antarctica people, but as soon as the Borg become active, it's an action piece. There's no exploration because, like you rightly pointed out, we'd be bored with that. We've seen it before.
Okay, so there is a second question here.
Okay.
What do these reactions reveal about their characters and the overall tone of Enterprise compared to other series? Well, I think that our response to the first part of that question was kind of embedded into that. Don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think in Q-Who, Picard has moments of self-reflection, sitting there, or Best of Both Worlds, there thinking, this isn't that kind of episode.
Okay, let me think about this for a moment, because you did just bring up Q-Who and the way Picard reacted to it.
Yeah. Look
at the way that Archer reacts to these beings, right? He doesn't want to have to blow them up. He doesn't want to have to kill them. He's trying to find the peaceful solution to this, the way Picard does,
right?
In there, he's trying to make peace with them, and he doesn't realize that they're bad news yet. So there is a similarity there.
Sure, but Picard in both Q-Who and Best of Both Worlds is given those moments of calm to self-reflect on his decisions. Again, this isn't that kind of episode. When Archer is faced with the decision to vent those two Borg, he's got like 10 seconds to come up with a solution, and he does it quickly. It's only afterwards that he sits there for a moment and has a guilty conscience, to which T'Pol immediately says, hey, you did what you had to do. Let's move on. This was an action episode, and I don't think it pretended to be anything else other than that.
As much action as an Enterprise episode gets.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think that Well, I was thinking about the other characters' reactions, and like Malcolm or Phlox, for example.
Phlox, I think, had the most interesting reaction to everyone else was dealing.
They all
With
they all
threat.
underestimated the threat.
Yes.
Phlox in particular did not realize what he was dealing with.
To me, that was probably one of the more interesting episodes or elements of the episode. Everyone else was just dealing with immediate threat. They're coming at you, shoot,
Well,
shoot until they're gone.
like the scientists on the research station, you know, they didn't immediately think them to be hostile. They gave it the benefit of the doubt.
Right. But then, like that scientist pointed out, he's like, look at him. He's clearly
looks
a bad
evil.
guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. I think Phlox's experience was interesting with a slow assimilation. That was kind of interesting, and how he said, don't let me eat. That will increase my metabolism, which will increase the takeover and so on. That was actually kind of interesting. And to show him slowly starting to get more and more, the skin discoloration, and towards the end where he started to be able to hear them. Mm-hmm. That was interesting. Everyone else, though, I think was just in fight or flight mode. And now that I'm talking about, how I had said that, every scene was basically them shooting at the Borg as they're coming. I do wish that let me back up. There's, I think, two different ways this episode should have been handled. I think one, if you're going to go with the Borg, which I don't think is the best solution, but if you're going to go with it, that it's the Borg, I think once those two started assimilating them, the original two, I think these Borg are pulling from technology and whatnot that's embedded in this current time. I think we should see like a less evolved Borg. Like, where are they getting the components to make personal shielding out of the blue? Have them be Borg, but have them be less evolved Borg, which might have been interesting. But I don't think they should have gone that route at all. I think they should have honestly made this a completely different villain, a villain specific to Enterprise that might have been an Enterprise threat going forward, but they didn't do that. But what I think would have been interesting, whether they made the Borg a lesser evolved Borg or even just the Borg that they were, how many times did we see them firing at those Borgs? The first shot got through, then their shields came up, blah, blah, blah. We've seen that before. Have them be, because these are 24th century Borg, have them be like as relentless as they felt to the Enterprise D crew. The Enterprise crew should have literally been backing up and boxed up against walls, about to die at every possible second, because these guys are so much more advanced and relentless. Your little phasers do nothing to them. They should have just blown them off. And, it doesn't matter how much you increase them. It's Tonka toys compared to these Borg. And I made a joke to you that during the episode, they should have figured out, just take a bat to these guys, because your physical energy weapons aren't doing anything. But the way the Borg approach on them is just like how they did in TNG. Fire a couple, they drop, whatever. No, stop that. Have them never stop. They don't drop. Make this more like The Thing. Make it incredibly horrific and scary. Have them ripping people apart as they walk through the hall, maybe not assimilating everyone, just going through and just defeating everyone they come across, and make it feel claustrophobic and terrifying. That's what they should have done. If they were going to do it that way. These are Borg that are 200 years more advanced. There's nothing you can do. As bad as it is for the Enterprise D crew in the 24th century, these guys are completely unprepared to handle it. And make it feel that way. Make you feel utter desperation and have them feel like at any second they're going to die. And they do have the energy. The tension is there. But amp it up. Give me that juice. Make it different. Like Q Who was, where it got almost they were scared, and Picard at the end saying, all right, I'm done. They got us, but have it be close quarters, physically holding hands with, things coming at you. Have it be like that, visceral. None of this 10 feet away phaser beam crap,
I like the idea, of course. I mean, but that would be, I think, a little too risky. I mean, they were pretty much just giving us what we wanted to see, what they thought people wanted to see at the time. And I agree with you about the fact that, yes, these Borg looked too much like Borg that were
24th century Borg.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they were.
Exactly. If they were, I mean, when we get to their ship, they go on board, they see them in their alcoves. This is all stuff that
I know. That's what I'm saying.
I know. That's too much.
Yes.
Too much. I think our minds as viewers would unconsciously be able to accept the fact that maybe because this is not the 24th century, they're far away from their Borg, the Borg that are there, that they don't have all their resources available. So they're going to be like partial looking, maybe like mostly still human looking, but they're still going to be acting like robots. I think we could have accepted that. And then
that would have been interesting.
Understood, yeah, that, oh yeah, they're Borg. They don't have all that technology with them. So they're still acting kind of like Borg. And their strength is there, and their sophistication in terms of like their collective thinking. And I think it would have been something akin to like Prometheus, for example, like where there's elements in there that remind you of Alien. Oh, that doesn't connect directly to it, right? But it's enough to know that this will be like that one day. Like and it's so different. You might not connect it. The characters on Enterprise would not connect it, or anybody else would not connect whatever happens here to the Borg that they know of in their time because it's so different. Mm-hmm. That makes sense, but they weren't willing to do that risk because I think they think people are stupid. Audience members are stupid. They won't understand it unless they see Borg with all of their dressings on in their alcoves and all the green lights, like you pointed out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes,
I agree.
So. I mean, look at the way people reacted to Prometheus. They hated it, right? Because they didn't see Alien in it. Right. Like I was like, it was,
how do you not?
But it was creative. Like
I agree.
They took a chance and like, okay, so you don't see fan wank in there. That doesn't mean it's not a good movie. You know that.
And then Ridley Scott overcompensated in Covenant when he had literally an alien standing up like Jesus going. Right. And you're like, okay, now you've gone too far. Somewhere in between is what the fans really wanted. Although I disagree. I think Prometheus was good, except for the lesson we all learned from Prometheus, which was the Prometheus school of running away from things, which is just turn to the left or right, and you will avoid this big rolling thing coming at you that Charlize Theron did not learn.
Was it too big for her to go left or right, though?
She didn't even try. I mean, you were not going to beat it going straight. Make an effort. Go to the left or right. You stand a chance. And that's like famously on the internet, the Prometheus school of running away from things.
I haven't seen that, but fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to Regeneration. It's a perfectly watchable, entertaining episode.
Sure.
I was thoroughly entertained. I was never bored, but it's not one that I ever want to come back to. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this episode is so highly rated kind of makes me it disappoints me.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That is this really what people think is quality? Like it is a quality episode, but
it is.
But it's not one of the best Enterprise episodes, not by far.
Because it's not an Enterprise episode.
And what was Cogenitor? It was like 7.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's still a good rating. But it's
Cogenitor should have been higher.
It's a better episode.
I agree. It's more original.
Yes. It's a thought-provoking episode.
That is a real Star Trek episode.
This is just fan service.
That's all it was.
It's well done fan service.
Yes.
But it's just fan service.
Yes, it is.
And this is the trap that I think people at Paramount or wherever it is that owns Star Trek now, CBS, whatever, they fall into when they see ratings, when they see criticisms of like, okay, they like this is what they want, give him more of this, without really understanding
why
exactly.
Right.
they just like, oh well, okay, put Borg in, put Borg, more of this, and that's when we get garbage like what we have right what Star Trek is right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's leaves me feeling very disappointed,
cynical
again at the end, and cynical at the end. Yeah, very much so.
And then you're the jerk, you're the naysayer, and it's like, well, come on, guys, don't you want something different? Wouldn't you? In what did we say? 2003 is when this came out. In 2003, if you didn't know, let's say you were just watching every episode as it came, didn't watch the previews, you didn't know that the Borg were going to be in this episode. Wouldn't you have loved to have seen this be you're holding on. You've made it almost through 2 seasons of Enterprise. You've held on through some stinkers, and you're holding on for some real good Trek to come back. Wouldn't you have thoroughly enjoyed this episode had they just made it not the Borg? Had it be the same episode, just a different... Hell, man, it could even be a species that we see later in TNG or something like that. Just not the Borg. Because this episode, like I said at the top, is technically very well made. It's fast-paced, it's energetic, the music and all of that. Just change the villain.
Are we spinning our wheels here? I mean,
no.
We've kind of already made that clear.
Well, no, I am. I'm just saying, though, because I said that, you're being negative, you're the naysayer and all that. But if you were the Enterprise fan in 2003 and this episode aired and it was not the Borg, it was something else, I think you would have been pumped. You would have been like, wow, where did that come from? That was great. And then moved on hoping to get more. As a Trek fan, this is the last we're going to see of this. It's gone. It was a one-off. But had it been another villain, a new villain,
mm-hmm.
or a villain from a species that we had a twinkle of in TNG or Deep Space Nine, whatever, but then becomes a central villain here, hell yeah. You'd have been saying, yes, this is finally it. We found our Borg, but it's not the Borg. It's something else. But it becomes a one-off. What could have been a great jumping off point wasn't.
Well, that's, again, this is where we fall into the trappings of a prequel series.
Right.
Can't give us something too great because we're supposed to already know about it.
Right.
So
right.
I think they're aware of that too, all too aware of it. The writers, I mean. So at the end of the day, I'm fine with this episode.
It's a fine episode.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine. It doesn't bother me. I'm not.
It's just disposable.
I'm not going to write criticisms about it on the internet saying, how dare they break continuity? No, it's fine. It's fine. But you're right. Yeah, disposable. That's a good word. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up about this episode? It's not very thought provoking. So it's just very watchable.
Yeah. That's
I mean, Cogenitor, like you said, we could have talked all night.
And we did.
And I eventually had to say, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So,
But there's not much to say.
No, it's just action candy and it's fine.
And it's well done.
Mm-hmm.
It is. But unfortunately, as good as it is, it gives us nothing to go forward with.
Yeah, we know it's not going to come back. We know it's not going to affect us in the long run in any way.
Which is a shame because it's a waste of a movie level composer and music that was different and stood out.
Well, and it's a waste of an episode in Enterprise's continuity, and they're developing their stories.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, it's just like, let's give them something that has nothing to do with anything from this series.
I know.
So, okay, so if we're going to rate this, I'm going to give this a B, maybe a B plus.
I was going to give it a B plus.
It's good.
It's a good episode.
It's good. I mean, clearly this is going against
in isolation.
The grain.
It's a good episode.
Yeah, in isolation, it's going against the grain of the internet anyway. It seems the internet at large, but a B plus. I think B plus. That's good. 2 B pluses. I think it's well deserving for that, but it doesn't cross into A territory. This is not Enterprise at its best.
Had it been another villain, not the Borg, I think this would have been an A plus episode. Easily.
Who knows?
That affects it.
Who knows? Well, I mean, what about season 3, the Xindi arc that we're about to get to? they made up a whole thing there.
They sure did. They were so close. Like, what if this had been the Xindi? You know?
Okay, that could lead into it.
It would have been a
precursor to
just like with the Borg, that's not the first time they encountered what seemed to be the Borg. They encountered them what's the season 1? The one with the humans that were frozen. What is that one called? It's like the second to last episode.
Oh, in TNG?
Yeah.
Oh,
with Ralph Offenhaus.
Yeah, no, I'm completely blanking at the moment.
Oh my gosh, what's the name of that?
Oh, I almost saw it. I can see the title. It's floating over the ship as it's their satellite as it's floating around.
Yeah.
Can't remember. But what was that supposed to? What? Oh, because that introduced the Borg.
Well, subtly.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
Both the Romulans and the Federation.
Oh, the neutral zone.
The neutral
zone.
Had colonies that were like scooped up.
Yeah, they run into the Romulans.
Yeah, and it's not till like 2 seasons later.
Well, that wasn't their intention.
They didn't know it was the Borg, but it became.
Well, that wasn't their intention to wait that long.
Right.
Yes,
that's right.
Something happened.
Yeah, the writer's
strike or something like that.
But,
those writers always go on strike.
But look at that. It got peppered in and it became interesting. So what if this had been the Xindi? I mean, this is only like 2 episodes away. They knew the Xindi were coming. Mm-hmm. Why not just do that?
Well, did they? Did they know at this point they were going to do a season long?
They had to know. Well,
they probably hadn't even started planning season 3
They totally knew
Not
because
in
the
long
season
run.
finale is leading into that. They knew.
Okay.
I think it's a wasted opportunity is what this was. This could have been the Xindi.
Well, the season finale, I don't know. I don't know. You think by this point, the writers knew about the season finale that was coming up?
They were 2 episodes away. I think they knew that they were already talking about this. They had to have that figured out in order to set up the events.
Is it really 2 episodes away?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
This is episode 23, 3 episodes away.
Okay.
Yeah. Because after this, it is, as soon as my thing works. I passed it. Episodes. First Flight is next. I know that. It's First Flight and then Bounty and then The Expanse.
Okay.
So yeah. They had to be talking about it.
Okay. Well, in terms of like, there's no awards I could give this episode.
Yeah.
There's nothing that stands out in my mind is deserving of any kind of award.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And because quite frankly, I wasn't thinking that deeply about it while watching it. I don't think the episode wants you to think that deeply while watching it. No insult to the episode by that. Like I said, it's entertaining on a superficial level. There's no memorable scenes. I enjoyed John Billingsley, his performance, while he was getting slowly assimilated, like eaten from the inside out.
Yeah.
And he has to perform his own gamma radiation surge on himself. That look on his face when he's inside the tube, that was good.
Yeah.
That was some good acting from him. I enjoyed that. But other than that, there was nothing that really stood out as being incredibly noteworthy. And aside from the whole episode overall just being entertaining.
Sure. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you.
Okay. Well, Marie did write.
Okay.
Aside from her question, she did write something. Hey, Josh and Justin. Hopefully Mayweather will get some love in the future. This is referring to Horizon, I think, or maybe The Breach. I can't remember which one this was referring to. Oh, I think it's
Breach.
I think it's The Breach.
You know what I'm quoting?
It's familiar. I can't place it.
Oh, that haggith. What a temper.
More breach.
More breach.
Yeah, I remember now. So back to her letter. I'm not sure I can keep up with you guys with this faster pace. That's referring to Justin and I. We said that we said last week in our podcast that we were going to be recording several in advance. So, but she has done that. So she got some in just in the nick of time. So thank you, Marie. So back to her letter. My TV viewing time is limited to the treadmill, and I may have been distracted by a certain show with dragons. Here's some input on the next couple of episodes. Congratulations to Sebastian on becoming an honorary 3rd member of the podcast. She did have a comment about Cogenitor. Tripp may have gotten off easy in Cogenitor. He should have been court-martialed for involuntary manslaughter. When I was in the Navy, my captain would throw folks in the brig with only bread and water, strip off rank, and throw in the kitchen's cleaning floors and toilets with a toothbrush for much less.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think he got off light. I think Archer, and I think I said this in the episode, Archer, of course, could have come up with some sort of penal action for him. But I think his intention is that Tripp learn from this and that Tripp live with what he did. The primary reason being that Tripp wasn't intending to do bad.
Yes, his intentions were good.
Yeah. So I think...
What is his motive? It's always about motive. Like, what are they?
Yeah. And so I think
intent?
Archer, as disappointed as he was, I think Archer's intention was very much to let the pain of what he did be his punishment.
I think there is a form of punishment that he deserved, but involuntary manslaughter, no.
That I think
so.
even though I said that he is responsible, I think that might be a stretch. It's
not very, I don't know how famous it is. It's well known. There was a real incident that took place, and there's a few documentaries made about it. There was
the teenagers.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
about the text messages?
The next Netflix one where she said, just do it already. Kill yourself.
I think it was HBO.
Yeah.
But
okay,
either way,
yes.
It was called I Love You to Death, I think.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most depressing things I've ever seen.
Very much
and
so.
incredibly disturbing
that
it actually got to that level.
Yeah.
And this girl, you look at her, you look into her eyes and you see like, what? You see nothing.
She's dead.
You see
inside.
deadness. There's nothing there. You're like, that is not a human being.
No.
What am I looking at?
Yeah.
Tripp did not look like that.
No. And because you're referencing that, the boy in this real story, he was already depressed. He was already suicidal. And she took that knowingly and played with it. Now, her responsibility was such that they actually had to have a legal court proceeding over it. Let's not go into, the ins or outs of it, but it was that much of a question where they thought she should, at the very minimum, be brought to explain herself for this, because we feel there's some sort of culpability. And
in that case, she told him to do this thing.
Now, whether or not she thought
told
he would
him
really
to
do
kill
it,
himself.
who knows?
This was, Tripp didn't say to
Of
the
course
cogenitor
not.
to do that.
Of course,
no.
he was literally just trying to help her be a person.
He wanted to help her climb mountains.
Of course. His biggest breach is that he wasn't taking into account cultural diversity, which he should as a Starfleet officer. And I think that's why Archer let him leave the room with that lesson. Picard's done the same thing before. Even Kirk has. He's let people go, even though he could have reamed them officially. They both, as elevated, thoughtful commanders, realized you're gonna get this. Like throwing Tripp in the brig isn't going to teach him anything. It's not going to make him a better officer. You're not serving justice by it, And if that cogenitor could speak from the grave, she wouldn't want Tripp thrown in jail for the rest of his life, because she would know what his intentions were, whereas that boy in real life, if he could speak from the grave, his thoughts on that girl would probably be very different. You know what I mean? And I think somewhere, consciously or unconsciously, Archer knows that. So I think that's why that episode ends the way it does. Just like it's not remotely the same thing, but at the end of Pegasus in TNG, Riker knowingly lies to his superior officer And Picard is flaming pissed about it. Riker even says, well, I have to go to the brig too. I did this. And at the end of the day, after Picard settled down, he realized, even though I didn't like what he was doing to me, he was still just an officer following orders from his superior officer. He was trying to make sense of two conflicting orders. He knows Riker's intent. So he let him walk out, even though he knows there's going to be proceedings later. He knows what the intent was. So to come back around, I think Archer knew too, just like you said. So I don't think there's any need for jail time.
No, I tend to agree. But
It's not like he handed her a gun and said, if they don't let you free, you go shoot everybody.
Well, we did learn one thing about Marie. We didn't know she was in the Navy.
Yeah, we did learn that. That's interesting.
That's
Marie.
interesting.
That must give you a very interesting perspective on a lot of different things that happen in Star Trek. Like I referenced Riker being given two conflicting orders, or I guess any time in Star Trek where there's action taken against an officer, and the commanding officer has a choice to be lenient or to be stern or something like that. I'm very curious as Star Trek continues. Please, I would be very interested in hearing your opinions from an actual service point of view compared to how Star Trek views military service. Very curious.
I've heard from over the years people who have served.
Yeah,
have a differing point of view.
I'm sure they do
when they look at the way Starfleet organizes itself. Yeah, but so I'd be interested too.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Of course, the idea with Star Trek is that it's, quote unquote, enlightened. So
of course.
They always have a different perspective. But yes, I would absolutely be interested in hearing that.
So what's the next episode?
First Flight.
First Flight. Okay.
That's the one with Keith Carradine.
Right.
Where they're going to go get drinks at the 602.
Okay. Well, if you would like to write into the show, it's podcastnx01@gmail.com. You can write in with discussion questions, any kind of comments, any kind of topic suggestion that you'd like for us to debate or go over, what have you, or insults. Be more than happy to read it.
Still waiting for those.
To us, no problem. Also, please do. You can also write a review on Apple Podcast, and don't forget to hit that rating. That would help us out a lot. Until next time.
Bye.
See ya.